Hi, listeners. Today we're speaking with Gaëlle Mogli, founder and CEO of ConnectAID, the international solidarity network that connects individuals and organizations to create humanitarian and development aid projects around the world and provides nonprofits the tools and support they need to be more efficient on the ground. Gaëlle's a French national with a master's in political science from France and a master's in communications and journalism from the University of Denver, and has over 18 years of experience as a journalist and communications expert in the humanitarian development aid sector, including the spokesperson for the UN World Food Program, the World Meteorological Organization, and the International Organization of Migration. Gaëlle has also worked with UNICEF and various other NGOs across 5 continents, including during emergency situations. So welcome, Gaëlle.
Thank you very much, Darcy, for this interview.
Great, so lovely to have you here. I want to focus a lot of our interview today on ConnectAID, but before I do, I'd love to spend some time getting to know you and our listeners getting to know a little bit about you and your journey being a journalist with Agence France Presse to working as a spokesperson for various UN organizations. So love if you could just walk us through a little bit of your journey. Thank you.
Yeah, so after my second master's degree, when I was at the beginning of my career, I went to South America for 2 years. And I covered stories of indigenous tribes and human rights while I was traveling from Guatemala to Venezuela. And so those 2 years were really special. I met really incredible people. I lived with several tribes. I was really living with them, interviewing them, and then writing in French, English, and Spanish. And I worked for the AFP. I worked for La Nación, and so that's probably what got me into the UN. This experience as a journalist.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I know you were also a communications expert for UNICEF in several countries, Vanuatu, where you were there for the post-emergency response to Tropical Cyclone Pam. You spent time in Malawi, Nepal, Romania, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. I'm sure there are others, but and I dare say we could probably have a podcast on each of your experiences working for those particular missions. But in general, what were your experiences like working in the field in country in some of these locations?
So yeah, well, for example, I lived in Nepal for like 7 months working for the UNICEF regional office for South Asia. I was in Malawi. I was the communication officer. Out of 18 years of field experience, there's just so much. I don't know what I can share, but maybe a few memories. For example, I think one of the most intense memory was when I was in Malawi, when I was doing a documentary on child mortality. And I went with some journalists to interview some children. And for example, one of the journalists didn't manage to interview this little girl, Grace, because it was just very, very hard. So she said, Gaëlle, I can't do it. So then I took the microphone and then we went on for this long interview. And this little girl, her name was Grace. She was 10 years old and she was in final stage of AIDS. And so, during those interviews with children, our goal was to make them feel good and not and the messages that she said were just so full of hope. When I grow up, I want to be a nurse. I want to give back. And we knew that she had only 3 months to live. But this little girl, for example, she gave me so much. And I managed to be strong for that. We spent like an entire morning with her. And then once I got back in the car, I just burst into tears. It was so those very intense moments, and I've had quite a few in my career, really made me who I am today, I think, and it gave me more strength.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I think, certainly there's a difference working in Geneva at UN headquarters, and then working in the field, with real people, and certainly, in empower, listening to their real life stories. I'm sure it has had a huge impact, on your life, and certainly Grace's life, and others that you spent time interviewing with, and as such.
And you were mentioning also Vanuatu. So I was a communication officer for Vanuatu for UNICEF there. And so we were living in a very, so Vanuatu is beautiful. It's close to Fiji, so it's like paradise on earth. And then we found out that there was this Category 5 cyclone that was arriving on top of us. And it was one of the most intense cyclones that the islands that went through. And so the name of the cyclone was Pam. And so it was quite impressive because it for 8 hours, so we had to hide underneath the house. I had my 2 very young children at that time. They were 1 and 2 years old. We heard noise, like we really thought we were going to die for those 8 hours. And then from the next day, I participated in the humanitarian response, which was also very intense because we worked from 6 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't easy. The humanitarian response was something also that probably directed me to work for and to create ConnectAID, which I will mention later, because I realized that how organizations were competing against each other, like who was going to have the biggest logo, the tents closest to the where the journalists could get the best pictures. And I was also a victim of this cyclone, and all my neighbors were victims and had no more house, and there was no more school. It was and it was not like, as you said, working in a regional office, as I did a lot working in Geneva. When you're really in the situation, it's very intense.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. That's a pretty impactful, and to, like you said, to experience it yourself and be part of that. It's not like you flew in to help in the situation. You were part of that, and having that fear. And I'm sure that and you had a lot of empathy with your neighbors and the people that were with you. So that's it's an interesting perspective to actually live the crises and live it yourself. So so thanks for sharing that story also. And I'm sure that's really profound. I don't know if your kids would still remember that. They were so young. They probably
No, they had a really good time because we were in this kind of dirt place under the house, and so we put blankets, and for them, it was fun. They had like flashlights, and they were like, yeah, party time with mom and dad, and they slept. And since the floor wasn't straight, they were rolling, and it kept pushing them, and the whole time I was like, what have I done? Where did I take my kids? And and then no, they had a good time.
Yeah. Well,
Except that they had
always
afterwards.
Yeah, I think as always, when children are with their parents, that's they're always safe and they feel at home. So, well, thank you that's a nice segue into ConnectAID. So I'd love to switch gears a little bit to talk about ConnectAID, and really how did the idea of ConnectAID come into fruition?
Sure. Well, during my experience in the field, I came to realize that a nonprofit nowadays, a nonprofit that doesn't know how to communicate, and a nonprofit that doesn't know how to raise funds dies. So we don't realize how much nonprofits need to spend a lot of time and a lot of money to raise funds instead of spending those resources on the projects in the field, on what they really know best, on their missions. And for example, there was a survey done by the University of Stanford that found out that up to half of what is found in fundraising is spent on fundraising. And that shouldn't be the case.
Mm.
So, and also, as I said, like, for example, in Vanuatu, but I've seen that all over the world, is that when you come into this career in the humanitarian sector, you do it for a reason. It's because you care, you want to make a difference, you want to be part of the change. And this huge competition between organizations, it shouldn't be there. We are all working in the solidarity sector, and then there's a competition between organizations because it's so difficult to get funding. So there are millions of non-governmental organizations out there,
Mm.
and many organizations, many nonprofits face a lot of difficulties to survive, and also a lot of skepticisms from the donors who are really not sure where to give. They receive calls to all the time from everywhere, and they're not sure where their money goes and whether the humanitarian actions are really effective as promised. So I'm convinced that for nonprofits to become more impactful, they need to involve people on a global scale and they need to show them what sustainable development and humanitarian is really about. So since 2018, I left all the UN system and the nonprofit I was working with, and I created ConnectAID, the International Solidarity Network. ConnectAID is the first combined humanitarian social network and philanthropic platform where people can connect with nonprofits, can give back, can volunteer, and can follow on their news feeds the sustainable development projects that they choose. So the idea of ConnectAID is really to increase the impact of sustainable action, to increase partnerships, and to connect people to international aid.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And certainly, I mean, some maybe are familiar with the development and donor process. So some of our listeners might be, but others might not be familiar with that. And of course, the larger organizations are the ones that we hear the most of, the big name ones that have the tent that are closest to the camera. Those are the ones everybody's familiar with, that they're donating maybe money on the airplane, when they get envelopes passed around, or they're donating for Christmas cards or something like that. So they're not maybe as familiar with mid-size or smaller size and NGOs that are doing such good work. So I love this idea of this platform, and the fact that you're involving both the individuals, enterprises, companies, as well as the NGOs themselves. So can you sort of tell us how that works and how that, how the platform serves that purpose?
Okay, so the URL is connectaid.com. It's very easy to log in. You become a member, and we have 3 different sorts of members and partners in the platform. So if you're an individual, so you put your email, and you can have your photo, and you have your profile, and so that's a way to enter a community of change makers. And the platform is viral because you can invite your friends. So the idea is people invite their friends, who invite their friends, who invite their friends. And so that's really generates a snowball effect to be part of the change. Then on the platform, you have a section where you can access a sort of repertoire of nonprofits with projects and nonprofits. So you can choose if you want to follow a project or a nonprofit. And it really explains concretely what they do, who are the local population involved. And so you can choose by country, or you can choose by SDGs. So SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, they're like a roadmap for all the humanitarian sector. And it's amazing because I think the international community did an amazing job by dividing those goals into 17, like no hunger, no poverty, exactly. So there are some people who are more interested in climate change, for example, in children, education, poverty. So you can really choose the project that is closest to your heart, and you can change also. And I believe that those days, donors and individuals are, we live in a world where we swap and it goes fast and we change. So having a donor that stays with one organization for 20 years without changing, it's so rare. Now we need to give the choice to people. Nowadays, we talk about COVID. COVID is really, and health is really what's on everybody's mind. Last year, it was climate change. So the idea is really to be able to go from one goal to another, so that you can really see everything that is happening in the humanitarian sector, and choose according to how you feel at that moment. And so you can decide to become a donor. You don't have to. It's only if it's, because donating, and I'm really convinced that it's only for if it's not painful, and it's so, I've seen so many people who are not very rich and who are so generous, but on the platform you can give back to the community, but and this is really an innovation, we are not taking any commission whatsoever on the donations. 100% goes to the nonprofit. And that's something that has never been done before, because if you study all the crowdfunding platforms, they always take, on average, it's 8%, but it's very often 10, 12%. So then you can deduct your donations from your taxes. And on the social network, you can track the impact of your donations. So you have your news feeds that gives you concrete updates of what's happening. So for example, you're following some orphanages in Vietnam. Well, you have some news about what's really happening there. And also you have other more general news about sustainable development and the emergencies happening. And so that's really a way to be involved, to know what's happening. And you have the possibility also to volunteer, because there's like a job board. And so that's it. For the individuals, I think it's the platform to be. So I hope that that everyone will go check it out, because there has been so much work on this platform, and also we have already 12. We launched last month. We have already 12 projects all around the world. We have one in Rwanda, 2 in India, Myanmar, South Africa, Haiti, and so on. And every project is just so amazing, and I just can't wait to be able to travel again and go there and meet them, because they're amazing projects. So now I talked about the individuals that are going to the platform. Let's talk now about the enterprises. The enterprises can be introduced to vetted international projects and nonprofits. And it allows them to give back to the community, and also, of course, to have tax deductions.
So can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah,
just
sure.
to clarify, when you say enterprises, you mean like a company?
Corporations. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we give them the opportunity to have visibility on our platform. So if they donate to a nonprofit, then they can have their logo and kind of show that they donate and that they are involved in sustainable development. And we can develop tailored approaches with them, with their staff, with their customers, and we can help them to foster employee engagement, and really allow them to be actively supporters of SDGs and change makers.
Great. Yeah.
Now, the third actors are, of course, and they're the very, very important actors, are the nonprofits. So we welcome nonprofits to join the platform. So the idea is to help them continue their missions in times of crisis. Like those days, it's very, very difficult. There are many, many nonprofits that are closing down, and the needs have never been that high with COVID-19. And I'm not just talking about the health crisis. I'm really talking about the impacts of COVID-19 on poverty, on hunger. How many people in the world can save enough money to survive for more than 2 days? If they don't work, they don't eat. So if there's a lockdown, it's terrible for those populations.
Yeah, I was just going to interject that I recently read that the Sustainable Development Goals, the goals for 2030, have been set back dramatically. I think I maybe misspoke, but it was 10 to 20 odd years that through this COVID crisis that while organizations were and people were well on track, that it's really done major setbacks. So yeah,
That's totally true.
Yeah.
So we help also nonprofits. We offer them the choice. So right now, it's actually free for nonprofits to join, to have their nonprofit page. But if they want to have a project, and if they need help to communicate, they can take our services, which are optional, and we can help them to communicate about their actions. We can help them coordinate their actions. For example, it's easy for us, and I'm a communication expert, so, and I have a team with me. We for example, we call the social workers in the field, and we ask them to give us concrete feedbacks, and to take photos with their cameras, and then we coordinate all this this communication, and it's really effective because the information is there. We just need to dig it, because the nonprofits are so used to writing like big Word documents for grants, but talking to the public is something different. But out of those big documents, it's easy for us to grab what's interesting and to really show the impact. And it's just a matter of format, and so that's why we offer those communications services. But we also offer a whole, and that's our goal, to offer a whole bunch of other services to allow nonprofits to concentrate on what they're good at, and not just on communication, fundraising, administration, monitoring and evaluation, and a lot of other tasks like this. Throughout the platform, nonprofits can find volunteers, they can find donors, they can find peers, new partners, and we help them to attract sponsors, and yeah, as I said, with this idea to concentrate on their mission and eventually to delegate the rest.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. And sorry to make you speak for so long, so I'm sure you need a bit of a pause. But I'm going to ask you another question. So yeah, it's what I find amazing about this platform is that, I think you're really spot on about how, that connection between, donors, individual donors, and directly to those people that they're, they're supporting. I think that's a really important, by the news feed and hearing stories, on the ground, to see the real actual impact of what's happening on the ground. I mean, I know myself that I would be very engaged in that. I'd like to follow and support organizations that are close to my causes, as well as just see how they're developing. And that's really impactful, I think. So, and I love the idea that you're giving them that support for the comms part of it, and teasing out how they can message better, so they can spend more time doing what they need to do. So, yeah, this is all around amazing platform. I'm really excited for you and for the team, and it sounds like a really the way forward, I think, as far as donations and working in this space. So, and you rightly mentioned partnerships for the goals, which is goal sustainable development goal number 17, and you also highlighted, which is what ConnectAID does, and you also mentioned, that individuals can select the sustainable development goal that they might be interested in, gender or poverty or climate change or oceans or whatever their choice is. So I love that. That's the first time I've ever seen that kind of platform. It's fantastic. So so let's just step back just a little bit. This is fantastic, and your 100% going directly to the nonprofits, and amazing that you're able to manage that. Now, I'd love to just sort of talk about your mission, and what is the overall mission that you're trying to achieve at ConnectAID?
Well, it's really all about partnership and Goal 17. We want to be part of the change, and we want to encourage solidarity differently. Our goal is really to connect you to aid, to connect you to international aid for greater social, humanitarian, and environmental impact. That's why we offer this new approach, this new system to international solidarity, with the belief that together we can tackle sustainable development goals, sorry, and we can tackle the disastrous consequences of the crisis that we're currently living through. So on the platform, on ConnectAID.com, on the one hand, nonprofits gain access to the tools that they need to communicate and to finance their actions. And on the other hand, individuals and enterprises can select the projects and the nonprofits by country, by sustainable development goals, that to really connect to them, and to really feel a sense of ownership of what those amazing nonprofits do.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, and maybe a year's time we'll have another conversation. Love to get the feedback from maybe some of the larger organizations that are spending a large proportion of their donations on salaries and use at communications and et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love you can come back in a year's time after you've got a good track record, and we can have another conversation, because I think it would be interesting to hear a different perspective from from the big players, and how that affects the way that they look at also at donations and their support. So, so I should have asked you this before, but I think I'll ask it now. Is really curious about the vetting process with regards to the NGOs that you're working with. Me as an individual, I want to know that the monies that I'm dedicating and donating, to a particular organization, has been vetted properly. So could you share a little bit about that process for us? Great.
Sure. Well, with the nonprofits that we work with are actually we become partners, and that's why I said it's all about partnership. We have a due diligence process in place. We worked for 6 months quite intensely with a lawyer based in Paris to finalize all the terms and conditions. And so in the due diligence process, we want to make sure that the organization is officially registered as a nonprofit. So it can be an NGO, an association, a foundation, that they're implementing projects that directly impact the local populations or the environment, that are in line with one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. If they want to post a project on our platform, the project has to be ongoing. It can't be like the building a school in 3 years. It has to be ongoing, because we need to see what's happening. So they need to be able to show track record of project implementation, and they need to be able to provide tax deduction forms for donors in the European Union or the United States or Canada.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Now, you're a comms expert, as you've said, and through, of course, through all of your experience working with the United Nations. But I think the critical piece, while the comms is a very important part of it, the biggest part of this is the platform that supports all of this. So I just would love to hear a little bit about how how that started, because that's a pretty big task in itself.
Yeah, so well, I have associates who are web developers and graphic designers, and we entirely self-finance the platform, which has a lot of potential. And it's already, we have amazing partners. We have our office at the Cité de la Solidarité Internationale which is at Geneva's door. It's like actually 50 meters away from Geneva. We partner with Impact17, we partner with Meaningful Business, and quite a few others. And we have a board of directors and a strategy committee member group with amazing people, for example, with Jean Ayoub, who is Secretary General of the International Social Service. Jean-Pierre Cubizol has been such a pillar for me, because he's, I'm a specialist in the humanitarian sector. So everything related to the private sector and the setting up of a startup, that was new to me. So Jean-Pierre has been amazing in helping us to really grow and thrive. And we have an amazing team behind. We have a program of ambassadors. So our main ambassadors are, I can talk to you, for example, about Adam Rogers. Adam Rogers was a former colleague of mine at the United Nations and is one of our ambassadors. He is one of the top 30 influencers in the world for SDGs. So it has been amazing to work with him, and he just wrote an amazing book on digital action for SDGs, and I was very happy to peer review his book, and ConnectAID is actually mentioned in the book. Other ambassadors, we have Barbara Ryan, Omar Badour. They were directors or former directors at GEO or WMO, because we are really interested in the environment, climate change, and also, so from this program of ambassadors, we have what is called a team of community advocates. The community advocates are part of most of them are young people, and right now actually we're starting this program. So if some young people are listening, I encourage you to go on the site and to apply, because as many voices as we can have will really impact our mission. And so those community advocates help us to spread out the word of what we do and what our nonprofits are, the needs from our nonprofits and their amazing work in the field. And so yes, we're really growing. We have I'm not working on this alone. I have a big team behind me, amazing people. And as I said, it's all about partnership. It's all about solidarity. It's all about being the change. And it's all about putting meaning in front of profit.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, it sounds like you've got quite a village helping you there. I mean, there's a lot of people, and from what you've said, I mean, people are really just donating their time and volunteering their time. And I think, it's particularly at this day and age and where we are with COVID, you know, I think maybe this is one of the good outcomes, that people are actually thinking about beyond themselves and really, you know, coming to terms with what's important in life, and that we're all on level footing, and that we are caring for each other, not just, you know, ourselves, but our neighbors and communities, the global community. So I think it's a really, it's a great time to be launching the platform, and really kudos to you and your team for getting so many change makers involved. And of course, I do need to ask you, how old do you have to be one of those ambassadors? You said you're looking for young people, so I'm not really sure if I fall into that category or not. So maybe don't answer that.
No, I mean, we have, for example, a retired psychiatrist from Holland.
Great.
So no, I'm just, yeah, I mean, there will probably be a majority of young people, but it's not just you.
Great. So thank you for sharing that, and exciting that people can get involved, and you know, participate in so many different ways. I think that's really fantastic, whether a donor, a volunteer, an ambassador, all being change makers. It's really, you know, and you being so and ConnectAID being so transparent in all the interactions. It's fantastic. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about your growth plans. You know, what are you hoping for the coming year in 2021?
Well, right now we just launched the MVP, minimum viable products.
Sorry, say that again.
The MVP, minimum viable products. That's
okay.
So, but it's actually made. I mean, there's a. How can I say that? On this very solid ground of humanitarian social network, funding platform, and service providers for nonprofits, there's just so much we can build, so much. And so right now we're looking for investors, but there will be a lot more interactivity on the platform. We're going to offer different services for nonprofits, as I said, so that they can concentrate on their actions in the field. We're going to develop, and we already started doing one. We sent one field reporter to Rwanda. We want to develop solidarity trips, because I found out that the people who go to the field and go visit what's the project and the action there and the nonprofits end up to become ambassadors for life, you know, and so if we can send out people to the field and spend a few days and really see what's happening, and then they can share to others, this is what I've seen. And those who can't travel, maybe they can say, hey, you know, this is what they saw. It could have been me there, and I trust what they say. So that's why we want to develop a lot more of those solidarity trips. We want to develop, also work a lot more with the private sector, and start a system of matching funds. We want to involve the corporates, the customers, their staff, and eventually we want to include the blockchain technology, and that will depend on whether we find an investor that is interested in going with us for that. As I said, we started this program of ambassador with this huge community, which is really, really working well. And all the people who've been in are, you know, they stay with us. They start with a couple months, and then they stay with us for a really long time, because they see that it's impactful, and that we're really doing something that is meaningful. And we're going to add also information, and we're going to create a news feed special for nonprofits, because right now we have a news feed mostly for individuals and enterprises to follow what nonprofits do. But we want nonprofits to also receive and go to those news feed and this news feed and have access to trainings, have access to news, have access to possibilities to attend webinars, possibilities to partner together. So I think we really want, our goal is to create the place to be for the humanitarian and sustainable development sector.
Yeah, Great. Well, it sounds like you're well on your way, Gaëlle. And, you yourself are just the perfect example of someone who, it was on the ground and experienced it, as you shared with us earlier in your experience in Nepal and Vanuatu and other locations, that you seeing what was on the ground and really being committed to that, and then sharing your story. And so here we are. So it's it's really a social network of people. Yeah. So you're living your purpose, actually. And so we're almost at the end of our time together. And I should say, for anyone that is listening on my podcast, that we are also recording this on Zoom. So there's a visual. So Gaëlle and I are actually looking at each other, which is very rare because I always just use the podcast app. So we're actually looking at each other. So this is a first time for me. So to have this kind of experience, which is really nice to be able to see people when you're speaking to them. So I'm sure Gaëlle will share with us where she puts this interview, so you can take a look at us while we speak also. So anyway, so we're at the end.
I can just I invite you to, this is going to be seen in a conference called STEP organized with Impact17, our partner.
Great. Okay. So maybe we could share more information about Impact17 and where they could, if they wanted to attend the conference. Is that possible?
I'll give you a link that you can share.
Great, thank you. So as I said, end of our conversation, and one of the questions that I always like to ask is what kind of advice would you give other women? It doesn't necessarily have to be women, but this is Women17, so I'd like to focus on how supporting women, whether young women or women that are in mid-career, really, what would you, what kind of advice would you give to women? To launch something similar, or to deep dive into something quite important, such as ConnectAID?
Well, I think it's not always easy as a woman to create to start a project, to create a startup, and to be taken seriously. I've experienced that myself, because most entrepreneurs are men. But I think when I gave birth to my two children, I think it was like, I realized that moment how strong we are. We're so strong, and we can achieve so much. And well, for me, ConnectAID is like my third baby, and I will never give up. I won't, and I believe in what I do, yeah. Well, I think to finish this interview, I'd like to say that we each have a role to play to inspire change for current and for future generations, and that we can't afford to wait. We need to take action now. And to go back to SDGs and partnership, I think SDGs are really the best option to reduce the worst impact of COVID-19 and to recover better from what's happening. And I also believe that we live in a time where when most of us feel this need for more purpose, for more meaning, for more solidarity. And it's a sort of revolutionary movement with this common feeling that things need to change, and that we're all in this planet together, and that we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. And SDGs are not just UN goals, they're everyone's goals. And this pandemic that we're going through is like a wake-up call with the possibility to not go back to normal, because this normal is not sustainable. So we can be the change, and we can all become change makers. And I truly hope that ConnectAID will help facilitate this evolution towards more solidarity.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you point out, actually, it's not a new normal, it is the normal. this is it. So there's no, we're not going to be the same when we get out of this. So this is definitely, this is our normal, and we need to accept that. So, well, thank you so much, Gaëlle, for joining us and for sharing your own personal journey, and certainly ConnectAID's efforts in focusing on Sustainable Development Goal number 17, partnerships for the goals, as well as many of the other Sustainable Development Goals.
Well, thank you very much, Darcy. For our listeners, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. My name is Gaëlle Mogli, M-O-G-L-I. And please visit ConnectAID.com. I just wanted to finish by saying that we created ConnectAID, the International Solidarity. We created it for you. And since it's a viral network, we're also creating it with you.
Lovely. Great. Thank you, Gaëlle. And I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Women17 podcast, conversations with global women changing the world, one sustainable development goal at a time. We welcome your feedback from today's podcast and wish you a happy, safe, and productive day. Thank you.
Thank you.